I think it's going. There it is. We're live. All right. Hi, everybody. For those of you tuning in, we are at episode 32 of celebrating the brand ambassador. And I'm really, really excited to be here today with Jen Marshall and Adrian Biggs. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to start off with the first question I always ask everybody, which is, what is your current position within the company? And I know this is a loaded question, but what are your responsibilities within that role? So, Adrian, I'll start with you. You got a quiet moment.
Okay, I have a quiet moment. So I'm now the Director of Trade Advocacy for North America for Bacardi. So for many years, I sat on the agency side doing all the execution, but now sitting on the Bacardi side, it's a lot of the strategic work around how we go and execute our advocacy programming and how we activate our people. And then a big part of it is creating the culture within our advocacy team. So that's kind of my two key functions right there.
You summed it up so quickly. It was so nice. And I know there's so many layers to that, which we're going to talk about.
Make it sound so easy.
Exactly. It sounds so neat. It must be the New Zealand in him. You just package it.
Yep.
All up. Jen, so what is your current role?
My current role is I'm now community advocate, still with Casa Lumbre, but with we've just launched a new. Well, at the moment, it's a vodka called Community Spirit, and basically, it's just there's three of us working on this brand essentially, and we're going to be. It's my job to bring it to life in a lot of ways in the field. We'll go into more detail in a second.
We are definitely going to go into more detail. And for those of you joining us, Adrian has a special guest with him. His 5-year-old is joining us sometimes. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. So, just enjoy that. We always like to. I do. I miss it. My daughter's now 16, so she's just now snarky. There's no giggling anymore. So now we're going to talk about it. And I brought this up because I fucked up and sent you guys the questions and mixed up vodkas because we all discovered that we all worked on a vodka brand at some time, which is really interesting. So Jen worked on Reka, Adrian worked on 42 Below, and I worked on Ciroc. So they all have their interesting stories in their weird way. But I wanted to talk about it because I don't know about you. I know I started off in 2005, and I know a lot of us started off. Adrian, I know you were over in London around that time.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, when did you start working as not until the last 4 or 5?
Yeah, no, it was 2014.
Okay, Okay, so vodka was cool. Back to being cool back then, kind of. Or when Adrian and I started, being vodka brand ambassador was not cool, especially Ciroc. Try going into Death and Company and I did have the other part of the portfolio, but having that conversation, they just used to make fun of me all the time. They're like, how's Diddy? But Adrian, working for you, working on 42 Below back in London back at that time, how did they accept vodka?
Well, I was luckily I was full portfolio in London, but then after being full portfolio Bacardi London, I moved San Francisco as a 42 Below brand ambassador. I was kind of lucky though, because remember Jacob Bryars was involved with 42 Below from inception, so already had credibility. Because if Jacob says anything, people tend to stop and listen.
That's true.
So luckily enough, Jacob had built up the credibility of 42 Below, and Cocktail World Cup certainly helped that. But never lived in San Francisco, never met anyone in San Francisco. I just rocked over there with a backpack full of vodka. The Antipodean Kiwi Australian attitude, a bicycle and a t-shirt, and just rocked around bars with bottles and said, hey, let's try this stuff. And, truth be told, I was met with a little bit of the harsh reality of selling vodka or being an ambassador to vodka. During the time when Bourbon and Branch was at full tilt, Clock Bar was on fire. It was a great spot to be. But the most success I truly had was in the Castro, rocking up there because our queer friends, our LGBTQ plus friends love to enjoy vodka in their spare time. And
it doesn't hurt that he's very handsome and he has an accent.
That helped a little bit.
A little bit. And Jen, you were in San Francisco for
well, born and raised, but I left there when I was not even of drinking age. So it's a different sort of experience that I had.
Yeah, probably true.
I grew up in North Beach. I grew up at Vesuvio. Both of my parents worked at Vesuvio, so I literally grew up sitting at that bar, eating beer nuts and drinking Shirley Temples. So
That's exactly. It's been in your blood since the day you were born. But working on Reka, like Reka was a cool brand. I mean, yeah. I mean, it had some street cred. You don't see it out there enough, but you see it slowly growing. What was it like? And what was your role? Because it was different. It wasn't just a brand. It was more of a traditional brand ambassador role, and you worked in an agency, correct?
Yeah, I was agency based, and I think it was. I forget what the title was. I think it was like brand associate or something. I don't know. They were always weird with titles, but like, I was just the face of the brand in Metro New York. You know, Trevor was national, still is, amazing. But I also like, in addition to like both of you guys, I had the strength of the portfolio behind me as well. You know, I didn't necessarily work on the other brands, but it's like, you know, walking in, you know, with a William Grant product, a lot of doors opened, you know, regardless. But I had a lot of fun with that one. It was like, you know, the kind of events I was able to do. I remember doing 2 years. I did the Polar Plunge. I rented a bus and filled it with bartenders. And New Year's Day drove out in the morning and they jumped in the like, you know, those kind of things. That was so on brand.
But you guys get to do some really fun stuff. Like I know you didn't work directly for William Grant, but William Grant does some really, really creative stuff. Well, let's talk, actually, I know I have so many questions, but actually let's talk about like, because portfolio is nice to have, but at the same time, I kind of envy people who have a specialty, like who get all the way in. They become the whiskey experts. They become the tequila experts. You know, I always envy them because I had to know about all the categories all the time, but I would never consider myself an expert on anything. Like I'd always have to study up. If I had to give like a tequila training, and it was an intense one for the trade especially, I would have to like really like spend a good couple of days preparing because I was like, I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about. Where my friends, the tequila ambassador just talked about tequila all day. And so they got really deep into it. So it just came naturally to them. How did you feel about that? Like, do you feel the same thing? Like you don't get to be the expert?
Yeah, a little bit. And there's not as much expertise to be had in vodka as there is in, say, tequila, for example. You know, let me find the nicest way to say that. But, you know, fast forward to working in mezcal, that was different. And it was very fun. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, there's more of it with vodka. It's more about, you know, I tried to find the nuances to it. You know, Ciroc is made from grapes. So obviously then trying to like, I used to use Ciroc. The original Ciroc had so much flavor, so we could use it as a gin. So I would try to make that story. So trying to make it cool, trying to bring that out, but also learning the history. I loved caviar. So any way I could bring caviar into my world, I did. That was like my way of making vodka. I was like, caviar party, anyone? Like, you know, so.
Oh, gosh.
Exactly.
Right. Well, Dan and I were lucky, right? Because we had really quite compelling stories like Iceland and its purity.
Yeah.
New Zealand and its purity. It was just an easy story to connect people to. Versus if you're coming from maybe a country that's not known for its vodka or compelling vodka status or purity
like
message.
Yeah.
A little bit there, but hey, you picked up.
Exactly. Well, Adrian, what we were talking about is also, did you ever, you know, envy, like, you know, do you think it's more difficult to, when you have a portfolio, to become an expert on one specific category?
Yeah, I would say so, but I would say having come from being a bit of a sales guy for a full portfolio, then to brand-specific ambassador, it really helped hone my skills of what you needed to be, how you needed to focus on being an expert in said category, which then helped me on my journey to go back to full portfolio again. Because once I could nail vodka, you know, and you're delivering trainings over and over again, you quickly pick up what your audience wants to hear about.
Yes.
And you can basically focus your next, I need to go learn about more about rum. All right, here's where I focus my attention. And especially generationally, it's quite different too. So in San Francisco, they just wanted geeky information back at that time. So I had to go on, you know, call up Jake and go, let's get scientific here, mate, because otherwise they're going to run me out of the door. So.
Yeah, I hear this a lot on this show. Like people always say that, you know, the biggest pressure they ever feel is when they have to present to the trade. It's like, you know, their peers, it's like there's this phobia. They're like, oh my God, somebody's going to call me out. They're going to know I didn't know. And that, you know, that imposter syndrome kind of comes rearing its ugly head. And I definitely felt that all the time. I was like, oh my God, please don't ask me anything that's like so far beyond. But then as you get older, you learn how to deal with that. You're like, I don't know the answer to that, but I can ask the distiller and you will. Right. Which is very cool. All right. So back a little trip down memory lane. All right. So I would, because you guys, I mean, I would love, if we had a longer show to get you guys to tell both your backgrounds, because they're both really impressive. So I'm going to sum it up to say they're very impressive. There's a long history in hospitality, bartending, running beverage programs, managing staff. You both have similar stories of getting promoted at a very early age to very senior positions where people are like, fuck, how old are you? Like, why are you like doing this job? But also, you also had to face a lot of challenges very, very early and learn how to deal with them. So it kind of prepares you for life. So I wanted to tell you, but still going in from the hospitality industry to becoming a brand ambassador, there's still challenges, right? So what were some of your challenges from transitioning from that world into this world? Jen, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. One of the most poignant ones that I remember so well, still I remember it vividly, is the loneliness that I felt right off the bat. When I switched over to this role, the field role, where basically I no longer had a bar staff, I no longer had regulars. I didn't have anybody to complain about that annoying regular with, or to think it didn't work, or any of those things. It was really lonely in a way. And it's and then sort of part two of that answer is that shifting into that initiative, that self-starting kind of schedule. You make your own schedule, right? And you're just rolling off of having a schedule and showing up and, closing a bar. So switching it over and then finally realizing I'm not, you don't have to be lonely. The entire industry is your staff, basically, or your coworkers or whatever it may be. But it was pretty palpable. I don't know, Adrian, did you feel the same?
100%. I had it here in my notes. Was one thing was understanding what you're meant to do every single day.
Yeah.
Because, I talk about it a lot yesterday with Elaine. It was about, you went to a bar and you understood the sequence of events that was about to unfold in front of you. As an ambassador, you have no idea when you first start what sequence of events will unfold until you have 3, 6, even 9 months under your belt.
Yes.
So it takes a long time to kind of figure that out. The other part to me was the language, going into I'm in a corporate juggernaut, right? There's a whole new language to learn. And we have obviously our own hospitality language. Oh, this is 86, grab me this, grab me that, and people, muggles, I say, don't understand half of what they say.
But all the acronyms, right?
Yeah. Acronyms is key. Yeah. Funnily enough, I just had that request the other day. We have some new Bacardi ambassadors join the team, and David said, Adrian, there's got to be an acronym glossary somewhere within Bacardi. Can you find it? Tracked it down. It's 6 pages long.
Wow. Wow.
Yep, that's a good one.
We had a training last week in New Orleans, and every time a presenter came up there and started dropping acronyms, I kind of put my hand up and said, anyone in the room know what this one stands for? And it created humor. Hey, you don't need to know, but feel free to ask the person next to you, because we're going to throw out some silly words that you may not understand, but someone's been in that boat before and they're happy to let you know what it is.
Yeah, no, I think that's so great. I hear that a lot on this is the acronyms when you go into corporate and or the distributor, just how things work. And Kyle says the language feels like it keeps changing. It's true. It does keep changing. And every company has different acronyms that they use. I went from Diageo to Anheuser-Busch, and they definitely had different words that they were using. So yeah, you definitely need a shortcut. And I also tell people, when you're presenting to consumers, you have to be really careful not to use language that is not common to a normal consumer. They might not know what a 750 ml is. They're like, what? I just buy that bottle. Yeah. that size, whatever that is, with the different sizes. So breaking that down so that they don't feel the same way. What are you talking about? But yeah, that is a big challenge. No, but you guys also learned a lot of skill sets from your roles, from being managers, from having to deal with difficult guests, having to navigate. Adrian, you talked about working at a luxury hotel, resort area where you had lots of different roles and lots of different rules of how to buy something. If you had to buy something, it took 6 levels of approval. So what are some of the skill sets you have found to be most valuable that you use every day now in your jobs? Adrian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so when talking to, like, I work very closely with John Cicero Team Enterprises on setting up our ambassador team out there in the market, and we adjusted job descriptions when I came over to basically say bar management, beverage director experience is nearly a must for every ambassador we have now. That management experience I had as a bar manager, restaurant manager, has set me up for my career. Everything from understanding process, organization, hiring, firing, training, developing staff was paramount to my success as being an ambassador. So that was the massive plus. And we do see it a lot of people coming from bartender roles across, and actually I find that they kind of struggle on the journey for the first 3 to 6 months, because we corporate people want a lot from you. We expect emails back within 24 hours. We expect you to pick up the phone every time we call. We expect the reporting to get in time. And if you haven't quite had that managerial experience and exposure, it's just a bit of a fast and very steep learning curve. So bar management experience or management of people experience is a big plus in my mind.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing. And how about for you, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, like I was going to say something along the lines of, like, so many bartenders going straight into ambassadorship don't even know how to use a spreadsheet. And luckily we've got that, right? That's like one thing going for us. But also, in my approach to accounts, like, I already know I can get into the mindset of what's going on. I can see what's happening when I walk in. I can know when to walk in and when not to. It's like I'm not going to roll in on a Friday night and be like, let's talk. It's just, but you'd be surprised how many people do.
It's why I created the Beverage Ambassador Academy, just for that reason, just so nobody does that any anymore.
But honestly, just knowing what would apply to an account, like, you can just look at it and know, okay, maybe this program is good, maybe this one doesn't really fit. That's just intuitive now. Having
to develop account strategies, like, because you understand how accounts work and what to look for to understand what kind of program they're running.
Like, we're able to not waste each other's time.
Right.
That way, so it's really helpful.
Yeah. Another one to add on there is I learned a lot by observation. So I was really fortunate in my bar management and bartender career to have some wonderful ambassadors, sales representatives call on me to win business over. And without even knowing it, they'd already sold me that I was putting this on their cocktail menu, that I was doing an LTO for the next couple of weeks. I had no idea. They made it seem like it was beneficial to my team, not to them. They were approaching me with this sort of opportunity. And I remember a lady by the name of Shelley in New Zealand when I was working in Auckland at Bar 3. She worked for Diageo, and she's like, Adrian, she came in and always came at the right time with a massive smile on her face, always touched every single one of my staff with her little bit of magic pixie dust and made them feel so special to her. And I just remember that. And I'll say that over and over to ambassadors that I coach and train, is like, think about the best ambassadors and representatives you've had come and speak to you, and literally copy that. Because if they made you feel phenomenal, you just go and do the same thing to the people you speak to.
Yeah.
And along this journey, of course, we've had a few that just aren't that good either. So learn from those that aren't quite as up to the skill set that you require, and that you go, oh, please hope they don't come in today. Think, what are they not quite doing right? And then just push that to the back and don't copy that.
What would be something you've seen? Like, do you anything off the top of your mind? Like when you that brand ambassador, you're just like, oh God, like, please.
Getting drunk.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the top one.
Yeah.
Big time. Jerry touched on it, coming in at the wrong times and asking for business at the wrong times. And the other part is not knowing their offering to the standards of the account they walk into. Admittedly, you walk into a neighborhood bar where they don't like to geek out on spirits as much as most. And they could just give you a bit of a top line. Here's what's important about this, and this. You got to know your audience. So if they come in saying, oh, this vodka is phenomenal because it's been distilled 27 times, hey, we're probably going to roll our eyes and go, awesome.
Yeah, have a nice day. I once was sitting inside PDT. Actually, I was standing outside PDT, and it actually wasn't brand, but it was a sales rep who had a flavored vodka. And he was just like, so what's this bar about? It's special. Like, I think this brand would really fit in there. And I was like, you obviously have never been in this bar.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a flavored vodka. It was like strawberry. It was something really, it wasn't even like citrus. It was like, something like bubblegum or something. And I'm like, sir, I'm going to tell you right now, you go in that bar, they're going to throw you out as soon as you walk through the door. You need to know your audience. But yeah, I don't think he listened. I think he got in once, and I don't think it was a very fun experience for him. But no, it's a big one. But Adrian, you also mentioned, like, when you were working for the large corporation, you had to deal with a lot of politics. And
right.
now working for a large corporation, you have to deal with a lot of politics. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that definitely helped me on my journey being young in a hotel environment. Hotels are process driven, and that's why big fan of people that have come out of Applebee's, TGI Fridays, national account world, because they are so driven down to the processes they follow. But I vividly remember at Bar 3 to actually get a new product through the door. One, the meeting would have to be directed to the food and beverage director first before I could actually meet with the representative. If I wanted to get the product, I'd have to go through procurement, who'd then have to put it into a system that would allow me to order it. If I then wanted to put it onto the menu, I'd have to do a massive cost analysis of the cocktail, put it through the food and beverage accountant. Prior to that being signed off, then go put it into Micros to ensure the recipe was correct, then go and train the staff. So menu development in that space was a 6-month cycle. Wow. We couldn't be as sort of free and easy as we wanted to be, and that's helped me on this journey because being go-getters like we all are in this fantastic universe of hospitality, Bacardi, I'm like, I've got an idea, let's go. But the question is, does it link to the brand that I'm thinking about? Will the brand team appreciate the idea? Does it connect to the field and their goals and aspirations? Will the distributor enjoy this too and think that it connects to the customer and their goals of getting rate of sale and putting cases on the truck and into the bars? So having that knowledge early on in my career really helped me navigate what I'm going through day to day.
No, that must, because most people, like, I find brand ambassadors to be some of the most creative people I've ever met. Like, and I'm so privileged to be in this world, and the creativity is extensive, but then it's like learning, I've heard this, like, learning, okay, it's a great idea, but is it scalable? Am I, is it right to fit the brand message? Like, and learning to, like, stop for a second, like, right. Before I present this or shoot off an email to my boss who has a million emails, like, maybe I should brainstorm it with a few people, like, flush it out a little bit, and then present it to my team.
Best advice ever.
Yeah. Jen, I was going to say, I think you probably agree with that. I know you have a lot of creativity and stuff you're doing right now.
Yeah. I mean, I've done so many crazy things, and I've been lucky to work with really amiable bosses who are like, yeah, go for it. When I have an idea, but, like, of course, if you can, like, prove that it's going to be worth it, I think once you've established yourself as somebody who's not trying to waste money, you can get a green light on a lot of things.
That is true too. And once you understand the problem, you're working for a smaller company now, so you probably, your conversation is directly with the owner. It's not as many layers since there's only 3 of you.
Well, actually, no, but a little different because they're in Mexico. But yeah,
oh, that's true. That is very true. Yeah. All right. So when you were first working for Casa Lumbre, am I saying that correctly?
Casa Lumbre.
Casa Lumbre. They became. I'm still. Yeah. It's my Staten Island accent. It always makes it very hard for me to pronounce anything that's foreign or anything that has an accent. All right, so they became independent. So when you first came on, they were with William Grant, and then and you became the market manager, where you managed to roll with the distributor. And there, within Empire, you had a ton of contacts, right? Yeah. You knew everybody, had established all that role. But now they then switched, right? So you guys became independent. Then you went into Lauber, which is part of Southern, where fuck all. Well, not fuck all. You don't know nobody, right? Yeah. I'm sorry. And Adrian, is your daughter in the room? And I just cursed. Okay. Sorry. So that must have come with a lot of challenges. So kind of talk about some of the challenges you had to face, like with the distributor, because I'm sure other people have experienced this as well. Like, and yeah, how you kind of.
One of the interesting things about it is remembering back to when I first switched over to the supplier side from the bar side. And I was, like, terrified of the reps. I was like, I don't speak their language. They're all a bunch of dudes in suits. I don't understand, like, whatever, arm's length. But it's, when I finally came around to realizing, oh, wait, these are your friends. You can really help each other. And, like, and I ended up, like, 5 years with working with Empire reps and developing a 5-year long relationship with so many of the best ones that I didn't realize some of the reasons. And so when I switched over last year, I was in my head, I was like, okay, great, here we go. Now it's just going to be with Southern, but the same thing. No, because it happened during the pandemic, right? So there was nothing in person. Everything was Zoom and email and all this. And I didn't anticipate the fact that, yeah, of course, they don't know me at all. Nobody knows who I am. They don't know the brands because we were launching new brands, and they didn't know the company because we had just launched Casa Lumbre US. Whereas I'm still working for the same people. My job hasn't changed really. I'm still reporting to the same people as I was initially before, just without, an agency intermediary. So it really kind of took me by surprise when I was like, wait a minute. Can you email me back?
Awesome.
Like, yeah, did you get it? That was and continues to be a little bit of a challenge because, rolling out into a new distributor in the middle of what's been going on in the last year and a half, it's tricky for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And not for nothing, we're in a artisanal / fine wine division, but it's like 80% wine. So most of the reps are somms, or were. So it's just a different thing altogether. And I'm not rolling in there again with William Grant opening the door for me, which I didn't realize was happening so often. That was just my pure charm.
Right. You don't know what you don't know. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You really don't.
My workaround to that is like, well, luckily, I still have a ton of connections in the field myself. So hit the streets my damn self, as much as I can. And then, I found 2 reps. Basically, you got to just do the work and find them. Once you find 2 or 3 that are like the ones that you can call for everything, it's like, just start there, start small. But it really is like, it's, incubator brands, incubator company. Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great best practice about start small. Just find, one person to connect with, and then you find 2, because they'll probably let other people know, like, hey, it's actually pretty good at what they do. And then, the rumor gets around that, you're worth spending time with and getting to know because you're an asset to the team. But it does take a while. I remember until I went on, this is going to sound so sad. I went on Bar Rescue. Because this is like 2005, 2006.
I remember.
Yeah. And, before that, they didn't know how to explain me because I was like the first person doing this role. I was the first like head mixologist for Diageo and the first person doing this like luxury spirits brand ambassador role. So they didn't know how to describe who I was and what I did. And then as soon as I went on Bar Rescue, they're like, this is Elaine, she's on Bar Rescue. And it was like, bam, that was it. They didn't have accounts were lining up. Like it didn't matter. I was like, that's pathetic. Like, because I'm on that cheesy show, but I realized it just made it easier for them to sell me in. Like, you should meet with this person, But I think they just need that catch. They need to know why they're going to be spending time with you.
Yeah.
Adrian, you ever have that problem?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have an advantage living in America, the accent.
Mm-hmm.
And stories to tell. So having an accent automatically unlocks where you're from, and that's been my lucky journey here in the US. Give me a platform to talk, and I'll just let it go.
I think that's probably really, really true. All right, so Adrian, let's talk about that. So during your career at Bacardi, you had gone from being a brand ambassador for 42 Below to being the portfolio ambassador to becoming, now you're the director of advocacy, which you're leading a team of 70. So that's a pretty good career trajectory. All right, so so obviously you're good at what you do. You obviously, other people think you're good at what you do, but you must have utilized. There's definitely things that we all kind of use as like best practices or just a ways of working that other people then seem to notice. You're like, and now as a boss, I'm sure you're noticing it about some of the people on your own team. So what do you think helped you, like certain practices that you just did that you realized like, oh, these are the things, these are good to do. I'm going to teach it to my team now. And because they helped me stand out to the powers that be.
Yeah. The first one in this world is, we said it earlier, if you've got two ears and one mouth, you should do double the listening than talking. It is vitally important, especially brand ambassadors. We all have a voice. We all want to be heard. We're alphas. We love being on stage. We've been generally phenomenal bartenders that have been in cocktail competitions, putting our all out there. So, give an inch, we'll start rolling off. But what I learned very fast, especially in a world that I was not so familiar with, I sat there and listened intently a lot to everyone I could. And every now and then, the opportunity, when it was afforded, and this is something that I need to stress to young ambassadors, when the opportunity is afforded to provide an opinion or to say what your feedback is, step the F up and say something. Having 70 ambassadors as part of the greater Bacardi Gran Familia, you'll find 70 people on a conference call don't want to step up, but boy, do I notice when someone does, because they're putting their front foot forward, they're pushing all of the sort of their fears aside and saying, I've got something to say, let me say it. So that to me is, I love people to put their front foot forward and say things, but that's how I sort of got noticed, because when people would ask, I wasn't shy to step up, even if I was wrong.
Right.
Even if my piece was a little bit off kilter, the management team would be like, "Oh, thank you for saying something. However, this wasn't quite where the direction we're going, but yeah, how about channeling your thought this way?" So that was really important. When I was offered the opportunity to present, I took it with gusto. So 70 ambassadors, you don't always have the opportunity to step up.
Mm-hmm.
When you get asked to do so, you step up and you prepare like it's your final exam at college or high school or whatever it is. You prepare, you over-prepare, because that is your opportunity to shine. So again, luckily enough, and I'll tell you, every time I got to speak in front of the big audience with the big bosses, I was shit scared.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd be shaking in my boots up until the moment I got on stage and just let it flow. So I prepared. And I always look back to my bartending or restaurant days. And I keep saying everything's a sequence of events. You know how to set up your bar. You know how to prep your garnishes, your juices, your ice, preparing the backup product for you to serve. Guest walks in, you greet, you place a menu, make small talk. We all know this sequence. I've used that to sequence out my journey. So preparation being part of that sequence. Do I have my computer charged? Is my deck in great working order? Have I had coffee? Because I shouldn't have coffee before I present. And Jamie Mandeville will tell you that, because I'll make 0 sense to half the audience. So, preparing.
Wait, those are more intense, Adrian?
Oh yeah, oh my gosh. It's just, I just speak rapido, which is rough. But also, I gave thanks for the opportunity. So I was always gracious to the higher ups to say, really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. And if there's anything you want, if any feedback you ever want to give me, please tell me. And they would. The one thing I kept being told was, stop swearing so much. Because in Australia, cussing is just part of what we do. It's like, oh, what a good, you say something a little untoward. But what I had to change was my language here, and they gave me that feedback, and that's helped me. They saw, oh, Adrian listens. He doesn't swear anymore. So that was a big bonus.
Yeah, I've had to learn that lesson. Only on Diageo, I never swore. My own thing, sometimes I don't mind dropping an F-bomb here and there, because it's who I am. But I agree with you. It is learning, but keeping your own personality. Jen, I mean, I know this is a question to Adrian, but did you have some of your networking within the company? Because you've worked within William Grant's and you've worked with an agency, any best practices you might have taken that they got noticed, or that they know that you're the right person for this role?
That's a good question, and I don't have an immediate answer for it.
That's okay. I realized I was throwing it at you, and I didn't.
Yeah. I'm sure there is an answer, but it's not.
Well, I know for you, you're really hardworking. You have a lot of skill sets. I don't think you're a person that is quiet, and you definitely.
No, I've definitely gotten myself in trouble plenty of times because I don't have a filter, and sometimes actually I do have a good answer for this. One of the things, especially when I was, with some other brands, we'll just put it that way, I was often the only person in a planning room, a POS planning room, that had any bar experience. And so I didn't have, there were things that were presented that I just was like, that's a terrible idea. That's awful. Here's why, but I just didn't do it with grace, I guess. So I was just kind of a negative person, but really I'm like, trust me, I'm doing you a favor by not letting you produce this POS item that is not going to work for.
You were a breath of fresh air, probably because you're being candid, like everybody.
Except that I I've learned a lot, but in the beginning, I I definitely was like, well, that's stupid.
Yeah, you have to be a little more diplomatic, is probably the right word. Adrian, you look like you were going to say something.
Yeah, the other thing that popped up as I got that pause is you can choose to be the engine of the train or just the carriage. And more often than not, I always choose to be the engine. So if I saw that there was a challenge, I'd be one of the first to come up with a solution. So be it Tales of the Cocktail, we're making thousands of drinks every single day. For the first couple of years that Bacardi turned up en masse, I just did all the beverage logistics myself. So I gathered all the cocktails, I did the spreadsheets, worked out how much stock to order, and then put together a team to help roll out the cocktails. That wasn't in my job description, but I chose to be the engine versus the train, versus the carriage. And that's
that's great advice, because there's a lot of things. Diageo wasn't even at Tails in 2005 when it first started, and I went down on my own, and I was like, we need to be here. And then I got them involved for the first time. But and even pitching seminars, like I tell people a lot in building your personal brand. I was like, nobody ever asked me to give a seminar at Tails. Like I just did it on my own. Like I just said, I want to do a seminar, and then I would bring in the brands. I would find a way to incorporate the brands. Kyle is asking a question. I feel like opportunities for positions beyond the brand ambassador role have changed over the years. We'd love to hear all your insight on how you navigated your next steps and any advice for young brand ambassadors for their next step.
Jen.
I'll go with that one. Honestly, do you remember when, like, I don't know, whatever, a good 5, 6, 7 years ago, the role of brand ambassador was like seen as a dead end. Like, there was nowhere to go from there. There was nowhere to go from there. There was no promotion from there. It was a really like questionable job choice, because it was like, well, what after, and he's right. Kyle is right. There's like all kinds of new stuff now. But I think the main thing that I would say more than anything is that you have to familiarize yourself with sales, because it's a hybrid role. It just is, with the exception of a few, companies that just make sure it's not that. It's just, you're more of an asset to any company if you also can grasp the sales angle of it.
Yes.
Not to say like you need to go into like, you need to figure out distributor management right away, but understanding both sides of the coin is really what's going to get you beyond.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I'm going to go from Anne-Louise Marquis from Grand Marnier, from Campari, right? Thank you. She had great advice, because she's living this. She has an amazing role. I love what she does. Her job is to bring happiness to people, and that's her job. But so to answer your question, Kyle, what her advice was, and I definitely agree with this, she started doing the job she wanted before she got the job. So she saw other positions that she thought were like very interesting, and she was like, I'd like to do that. Like, so she started, with presentations, to your point, Adrian, like she really wanted to become a big presenter for the company. So she gave presentations whenever she could. She'd be like, hey, I want to do a presentation on, and she would just create presentations and invite management to come see it. Like, I'm going to give a presentation about the difference of whatever it may be, like teaching them how to make cocktails or whatever it was. But she wanted to get noticed. So she just started, and then she started creating this role of delivering happiness, and life-changing moments, because she started coming up with those ideas, and then she would pitch those ideas, and then she proved the concept that this is something worthwhile to the industry. And then eventually she said, I want to do this job. Can I make this into an actual job? And that's how I actually got my job as the head mixologist. Was I just pitched it. I was like, nobody else was doing it, and I asked if I could, and so many people said no. And then one boss said, fuck yeah. Sorry, I cursed again. Like, hey, like I had a boss who believed me. So I think that's my words of advice. Figure out, like, if you see jobs that find yourself interesting, spend some time with those people, understand their job a little better, and then see how you can start doing a little bit of that role before you actually get the job. Adrian, what do you think?
You guys both nailed it. Jen's portion on it.
Giving you a high five, Jen.
Yeah, literally both. It's a hybrid role now. Has been for the last, I'd say 5 to 8 years. It's really been hybrid. Some national ambassadors are true figureheads of the brands and aren't really asked to do the commercial part of the role, but it's definitely gone that direction. And then, that was really sound advice of those notes you pulled from Anne-Marie, Anne-Louise, sorry. And Kyle's on our team, so just an FYI there.
Funny that.
So he's probably putting me on the spot a little bit here, But what I can say is there's been some phenomenal opportunities afforded people within the Bacardi's, Gran Familia, be it Jamie Mandeville, now our trade director of education, be it Colin Appiah, who's, our multicultural advocacy director. There's those, and look, those roles were created because Jamie and Colin were like fighting for it. They pushed for it.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily enough, I have a fantastic boss in Heidi Vargas that saw the need and was like, Adrian, if you think it's the right thing, please rubber stamp that, make it happen. So she put faith in me, but also, knew it was the right moves and was like, rubber stamp that all day. And I'm very blessed with the team I work with. And then Kyle's on this journey with us, that there's been an opportunity abound for that guy. But Kyle, please listen into what Elaine and Jen just said, because it's vitally important.
And I think, Adrian, to your point, you said before about putting your foot forward, Kyle is putting his foot forward.
He is.
There he is. He's listening to your advice. So way to go, Kyle. All right. So, okay. All right, let's talk about a little bit about social media, right? Because being good on social media has definitely become, an essential skill for brand ambassadors. And I think some of us are still all figuring it out, right? But it's important because it's one for building one's personal brand as well as your professional brand. But I've also discovered some companies have very different policies. I mean, some like brand ambassadors aren't allowed to have social media. They can't be associated with their company at all. They have to have just a personal account. But I know, like Adrian, you have a huge team. You have a lot of strong personalities on there. Some of them have their own personal platforms that I know Bacardi supports. But I'm assuming there's like guidelines. I don't know are you able to share some of those?
Yeah, it's the classic guidelines are Discus compliant straight off the bat. Right. So we have to conform to what Discus has set forth as a trade organization for us. Which is tricky because we have to communicate constantly to the team what those requirements are. Because if for example, you can't on social media say, "Hey, I'm at this bar today, and we're doing a $6 special on martinis from 4 to 6," because saying it just about one bar is considered favoritism by Discus, TTB, etc. But a young ambassador might be so excited to go, "I just got this first feature. We're doing $6 martinis. Got some oysters on the side. I can't wait to celebrate this with the universe." And it's just they don't recall the importance of being within those Discus compliant in that space. What we do encourage.
What's Discus?
Oh, there we go. Distilled Spirits Industry, basically council. I can't remember the exact acronym. Jen, can you remind me the acronym?
I actually don't remember the actual acronym either. It's
council.
What Discus stands for? Yeah, exactly. Distillers Industry. I don't know.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
It's an organization that monitors all things liquor. I don't know. That's the thing.
And then what we are trying to be is as organic to the person as possible. I think Alan Ruesca Palayo, our Cazadores ambassador based out of New York, he's just dope on social media. He just loves it. It connects to him. So we ask people to just be organic and true to themselves on social media. Because look, let's face it, there's some people just aren't great with photos and writing captions. My wife Ariana, she likes to check my grammar on all my posts because often I just do it really fast and don't proofread it. She's like, "Adrian, you just spell end, N-A-D. What's going on with you today?" So I have to go back and edit. But we try to be super organic, very smart with it. And it's like, don't put anything on there your mum wouldn't want to see. It's basically a proviso as well. So
I think that's great advice. And also Grammarly. If you don't have the Grammarly app on your phone, it really helps. It will double check all your grammar and spelling. Because I also have a partner who be texting me. He's like, "Hey, by the way, you misspelled that blah, blah, blah word or whatever. You might want to fix that."
As Adrian picks up his phone, goes to the App Store and gets Grammarly.
Yeah, exactly.
Get Grammarly.
I don't know that app either.
It is fantastic. I use it. I don't send anything out without putting it on there through there. It corrects your grammar. It's worth getting the professional one. Jen, for you, what do you guys have? You're a smaller company.
I mean, we have the similar ones. So we have to, everything has to fall within legal parameters, so same. Although I think in our case, it differs by state. Like, I don't know if we have an overarching rule. It's sort of like if you know, in New York, you have to mention 3 accounts. In California, maybe not. But because it's smaller, we can be specific to states, I think. But that being said, it's not, there are no like crazy guidelines. It's like mine is just attached to my personal account. I'm no Luddite, but I'm no Kayla Mata when it comes to social media. like some people just kill it, you know. She's amazing. But luckily I have Camille Austin on my team as our director of advocacy, and she is so good at like creating things that basically like for us to share, you know. She's really, really good at that. And we're also now working with a marketing company with White & Kennedy, who are sort of like controlling the social media for my brand, my current brand, and I can just share that stuff. So I'm just like,
that's great.
Like to sit back and share things.
And I will add, I just commissioned a study with Nielsen CGA, and 750 bartenders were part of the survey, of which 74% responded that social media does help them in providing a recommendation of brands they have behind the bar.
Wow.
Yeah, it's social media is still a big tool for them to,
wow,
you know, vision of what brands are doing out there. And maybe if they've seen a great story or a great post on Grey Goose vodka, it just might remind them on that shift that Grey Goose is a fantastic vodka, and I'm going to make a martini with it for the guest that walks in.
Yeah,
so
that's really, really good to know. No, I always ask that question because it is, you know, people have had different things of like building their personal brand. So, you know, they've had that conversation with the brand and say, hey, so this is who I am. Like, I really love fashion, and I believe this ties into the brand. So I can keep it separate, or I can incorporate the brand into my world. Are you cool with that? This is like what I do. And so that way they can build together. And I think that's a good conversation to have, you know, or what images, you know, and I think most of the images are pretty obvious of what you shouldn't be putting out there in your feed, like drunken photos, you know, and any nudity, like, but still, like, you know, but there also might be things you're not aware of, like, okay, so these are the general things I shoot all the time, like I shoot par menu, whatever it is, and like just letting them know, like, these are the things that I have a theme, and this is what I usually do. Does this work with what we're doing? Because sometimes you do need clarification, because it might be a complete disconnect from the brand, and I don't know if there's a negative. It could have a negative impact. At least I've seen it happen to some people. All right. So, and is there any other any recommendations for brand ambassadors, what they should never do besides what I said?
Well, if you are interviewing for a role for a brand ambassador, I think it's important to go to the brand's specific social media, and you'll pick up where they live, which space they live in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Barty as a brand lives in color and culture, dance, tropical style drinks. And if you can embody that in your interview process, you pretty much got a leg up. Bombay Sapphire loves a gin and tonic right now. The Bombay and tonic is a delicious drink. But they also live in that art space. You know, we did a beautiful bottle collaboration. This is the second year of doing it with Stephen Harrington. This is around sort of, you know, global sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? You're going for a Bombay interview. It's probably wise to talk about an interest in the creative space, an interest in sustainability, because guess what? It's going to give you a leg up. So every brand has those personas that they live to. And if you as a brand ambassador can help be part of that journey, man, they're going to love that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. That's really, really good advice. All right. So what else are we going to talk about? No, I love that, because it is, you should always do your research right before you interview for any company, but that's a good looking at their social media and then embracing that. So when they ask you what's your favorite drink and you're like, it's a gin and tonic.
Slam dunk.
That slam dunk. You know, there you are. All right. So Jen, right. So we're going to talk about your new role. Well, actually, no, before we go into that, we're going to talk about advocacy, because our roles are, you know, we've all had roles of being an advocacy, right? But for you talked about, you have when you took on that new role of managing the distributor, you actually negotiated that 30% of your job would still have an advocacy role within it. So I wanted to just explore, like, why was that important to you, and what exactly did that mean?
It was very important to me, but it's interesting because having worked really for the same company, for the same people for 5 years, just under different umbrellas and through different agencies, it's like, you know, to me, there's still a through line. And when we were launching Casa Libre US, like the US arm of the company, it was basically that's what was needed, right? We needed somebody who was going to ultimately like basically be portfolio manager for the state, right? But the job was specifically designed to like lead up to state manager and yada yada yada, which is never, I think it's as important to know what you don't want to do as it is to know what you do. And I didn't want to go into full sales, and I didn't want to leave behind the aspect of my job that A, I was best at, and B, brought me the most joy. So in considering what I have to give to my employer, like why would I just push my best skills aside? So I really, and also like, I know that's necessary for me to be happy in a role. Like I didn't want to just do sales. I needed to still be involved, albeit peripherally or however it worked, in things like, working with Camille on planning tails and BCB and whatever those things were. Well, as it turned out, that didn't matter because then there was a pandemic, but so it ended up very heavy in distributor management style. But, nonetheless, I was really thrilled that they were happy to do that for me, that they valued that aspect of my, contribution enough.
Yeah. I think, but it's also important you asked for it. You lined it up. You didn't just take the role that they gave you. You're like, all right, I know that role is necessary, but in order for me to do this role and also be happy, I need this part of this job to also be within it. And I think that's important because I don't think a lot of people know they have the power or the confidence to do it and ask that question. And that leads to like talking about advocacy, because you do need to advocate for yourself sometimes within companies, right? To make sure you're getting the training that you need, you're getting the supplies that you need, like, because some people just suck it up and then they get miserable and then they quit. So Adrian, I don't know if you've had any experience of like yourself, like of just advocating for some things to make sure that, you were happy.
Yeah, of course. And we have a pretty good process, I think, where we have to book time with our managers to talk through, where our career path's going, what journey we're on, some goals we have. And that's a great time for us to say, hey, I'd love to know more about forecasting. I've been pigeonholed to advocacy for a long time, but I don't understand commercial forecasting. So I can go and ask for that. And they'll be like, oh, let me set you up with the best forecaster in the business. He happens to be in California and, they do it really well. So I'm going to send you on that journey. So we have culture set up that you can go and ask for that. I know, having been an ambassador for many years, I try and hear out every ambassador and their needs, but I try and beat them to it, be it through media training, be it through being a better storyteller. We just did a fantastic planning workshop in New Orleans. It was so nice to be there, to go out and see the trade. And I let Matt Tides, who works with us, created a phenomenal agenda, knowing exactly what the ambassadors needed to do to get through the next 6 to 12 months. And, he got so many high fives for taking us on this journey of understanding commercial acumen within the business, how to be a great storyteller, which leads into being a phenomenal educational resource to the trade, and then how to legally build programs in markets. So we gave these guys a bunch of tools. So we try and beat them to the pun, but also we're an open door of like, hey, what challenges do you have? How can we help you?
Yeah, I think that's really great. And Jen, you also had it. No, I think it's amazing that you guys are spending that much time on the training, giving them those tools. And beating and punch is nice, because knowing that your bosses are actually paying attention to what you need is like half the battle. It's like, oh, somebody cares. Somebody actually noticing that like this is a need before I even have to ask for it. It probably goes a really, really long way. Jen, I know we talked about this too, because you were also saying how you had to advocate when you first got the job working. I think it was before Rika, that you had to advocate to go to Tails.
Well, I mean, because basically my role was based in Metro New York. And so in the beginning, it really wasn't obvious to them that made sense. And I had to literally, I had to actually basically submit a report. Basically, this is a percentage of bartenders from New York that are going to be there, and explain how New York is the most liquid of cities. I could meet somebody in Portland and then they'll be managing a bar in New York the next week. It's like that the industry was not so segmented by market, but it's actually national. Well, it's international, let's be honest. But in the beginning, I really had to sort of prove it, make him understand that there would be an ROI for that. And That was for both Tails and for Portland Cocktail Week. All these, things that I was like, listen, it's gonna make me a better employee for you in this market if you, invest in this for me, and it worked.
Yeah. No, it makes so much sense. I had to do the same thing. Diageo, it was not obvious to them that when I was just based in New York, and then eventually my role became national, and that was a little more obvious. But in the beginning, like getting Diageo into Tails, but also just and Portland and all the cocktail weeks, and they're like, I don't understand. And I did have to sit down with them because, when you work with a corporate company, they don't go to these things. Like, going to Tails was not something in their mindset. Going to bars is not something people from Diageo do. They just don't. So having to show them, but you do, and to your work, like if you aren't an advocate, you have to give a case study. You sometimes do have to fight and be like, okay, so this is why, like, I had a call. I was like, here's a list of my accounts. I know we're going down the Tails. Like, so I'll have a chance to socialize with them, take them out to dinner in a different
outside of the bar when they're not working. Yeah.
And giving them that proof and being like, okay, so this is what I plan on achieving. So you do have sometimes give your bosses a reason, and it's not wrong because they're like, it's not their world. So to them, it's the party.
Yeah, and to them, they really, if they don't know, they don't know. And it may sound like I'm just trying to go down there for a party. Yeah. So you really have to sort of, advocate.
Yeah, and also for the training, sometimes if you don't have as great a company as as Bacardi behind you, and asking for what you need. Like I realized that my PowerPoint skills, need me to be upgraded, and I really like a class, or I realized my storytelling skills. Like I was so grateful, Diageo brought in a corporate trainer for me to teach me about presenting the brands and also being in corporate meetings and how to present to the executives. And it did so much for my career, and it was something I asked for, and then they took the time and spent the money on it, which was fantastic. So, but it is knowing that a lot of people know that they should ask for something, and sometimes you're working in a really tiny company, they don't have the means. So just knowing where you are, and it's like, all right, well, I know in the next I know what I need, and I'm going to go to another company.
Yeah, if you're expressing interest, they at least know that that's an interest of yours.
Yeah.
Down the road, So
no, absolutely. All right, so now I want to talk about. So Jen, let's talk about your new role because it's such a unique role. So let's talk about it. So because you're the community advocate. For the portfolio, for the vodka.
Just for the community spirit.
The community spirit. So tell me the inspiration behind this role and what your goals are.
So, I mean, we just launched really last month. So it's all very brand new, although I've been working behind the scenes for a little bit longer than that. But this is still a Casa Lumbre product, but it's sort of like, it's like a little bit of a step to the side. And we started with a vodka because vodka is the easiest liquid to exploit, frankly. It's basically like we the brand only exists in order to get back into the community, and so we're working on, we have pretty lofty goals, equality, equity, opportunity for all. Is that too much to ask? But it's actually, so I mean, my goals and my challenges are kind of one and the same, which is like to prove that this is a viable business model. It just really is that the doing the right thing is the profitable thing at the end of the day.
But I want to stop you one second. There was an inspiration behind this, wasn't it? It was the
right. Well, there were a few, and I'm very proud to say that part of it was some of my actions when we launched Abasolo in May of 2020. It was just right when buyers were starting to, barely crawl back out of the swamp, and it was just, I was like, we can't sell something right now. We can't roll in and try and sell a delicious, wonderful but niche vodka or whiskey at the moment. And they listened, and they came back with here's what we're going to do. We're going to donate 100% of our profits from this brand to another rally for the first 6 months, I think it was. Because we had to launch, it was in the warehouse, right? But doing those kind of things with making the first taste be a good one, with always just an ear towards how can we help our hospitality community. That's the whole thing. And then, we did a few other things. We organized the industry cleanup after the protests, and just always, I was doing what I could to hire out of work bartenders for whatever I needed for, deliveries or spreadsheet fillings or whatever it was. I always just did everything I could for that community, but also she was incredibly moved by the Hong Kong protests and sort of a thought of like, look at these people putting everything on the line. What do we stand for? What do we stand for, really? And so, having this platform as we do, it just sort of was birthed into this like, let's do the right thing. We can do it. We can do this. So it's a totally different model. It is, and that's actually going back to what my challenge is. It's like presenting this idea that's never been done and getting people to understand it. So it's not performative box checking.
Right.
It's not like I'm not going to have a rainbow logo in June. It's nothing like that. It's not even like dollars donated to XYZ. It's actual like quality of life impact stuff on the ground. That's going to make
amazing. Do you have the bottle there?
Yeah.
Because I think it's really, Adrian, have you seen it?
So it's the label itself is well, it's a blank canvas because it's your space, it's not ours. And the idea is that we'll never talk about the liquid again. It's also delicious though. It's still Casa Lumbre, not for nothing. But it's something that wait, I just lost my train of thought. Anyway.
Well, we were talking about the packaging because you have the tags, and the tags mean something as well.
Yeah. So this is actually just that's it. That's the logo, which you won't see very often. It comes with a sticker that says "Lead by Example," and then this middle tag. It's blank at the moment, but it's going to this represents accountability. It's going to list what we've done. At each time this is printed, it'll have new sort of impacts and actions that we've done and things I'm doing so far. I've already made a little splash. About to do the third of hiring a financial advisor to give a financial wellness seminar to hourly and tipped employees. Just the kind of things that actually this harkens back a little bit to my activations as a brand ambassador, where I would want to do the things that people always wanted to do but would never do on their own, like a pull punch. But in this case, things that people really need but would never seek out on their own,
that makes a lot of sense. And you said the hardest part sometimes is finding the right accounts, because a lot of the accounts.
Oh, well, that's the thing. It's like it's also going to be essentially a hunt for people who are aligned and like-minded. There's going to be a lot of accounts that this doesn't really apply to. It's not going to go into.
What type of account are you looking for?
Well, basically, anybody who's already doing the right thing, and the right thing can be any number of criteria. It could be you could be minority owned, which is not doing the right thing, but not without its own speed bumps. But advocating for fair wage, like providing a non-toxic work environment, proper schedule given out a week in advance. Imagine that. Just those kind of things, like real work-life balance provided by an employer. And if you're already in that mindset where you're one of the people providing that for somebody, then that's who we want to work with, basically. So, cool. It's all new. We'll see how it goes, but I have high hopes.
Right, because you have to prove the project, because nobody's ever done selling for the right thing to make money before.
Exactly. and we're not putting our name on anything. It's not even about splashing a logo anywhere. I don't even care if you use it on the menu. It doesn't matter. It's just, let's see, what can I do for you? It's really us. I have a microphone and I'm giving it to everybody else. What do you need?
Hey, if the proof of concept works, you're going to revolutionize
this space.
And that's a benefit of also working with a smaller company. I think sometimes you might have a little more flexibility. I mean, Adrian, I know Cardi does a lot of cool things, but I don't know if they might be able to do something. I mean, they do a lot of good things for people. I know that.
Yeah, we definitely try our best. And onto your point, we used to go a group called Financial Gym, Jen.
Oh yeah, that's what we're using.
Oh yeah, the ladies there are phenomenal.
Yep, that's what we're using. Yeah.
Perfect. Good to hear.
Oh, that's actually, I'm going to get their information from you too later on, because we're organizing Education Week for the USBG in New York, and that was one of the things people asked for. So,
nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, that'd be very, very cool. All right, Adrian. So we're wrapping it up here, but I want to say, so part of your role as brand director of advocacy is creating culture, right, amongst the team. So can you explain a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, of course. Having 70 odd people out there and all with different jobs for different brands, and everyone's on a slightly different journey, right? We have incubation brands too, be it Aberfeldy, it's very quite small, Banks, Facundo, Teeling Whiskey is still incubation. And then to those that are definitely in evolve stage, like Bombay, Bacardi, Grey Goose, for example. So trying to get some standardization across what are very different needs for each ambassador team has its own challenges. So, all we're trying to do is create some culture that brings us all together, understanding that we're all on the same page, on the same goal. Luckily, within Bacardi, we have these three phenomenal pillars to work to, and that is fearless founders and family. So fearless is being that entrepreneurial spirit, right? And this comes all the way from Mahesh, our global CEO, all through regional presidents and CEOs. So fearless is a great one. Our founders is that Bacardi is still a family-owned company, and it's Don Facundo Bacardi back in the 1862 created this company. So we try and tap into Don Facundo's mindset of how he's gone through the trials and tribulations of being in Cuba, making a run back in that time, and how he succeeded through, a myriad of challenges that are always presented to an entrepreneur. And we call our team La Gran Familia Bacardi of ambassadors. And I'm not going to take credit for that because it came before me, but I'm just going to try and continue that La Gran Familia approach across. And our ambassadors feel connected to it. We had a WhatsApp group called La Gran Familia. I did some backpacks with La Gran Familia, and they feel like they have a purpose and a being based on those pillars. And all I have to do is maintain that culture, and that's through being consistent in the approach, leading by example with those three pillars, and then also fighting the fight for the team. They don't see it behind the scenes, but I'm obviously, I've got the gloves on with some of the brand teams every now and then going, hey guys, let me fight for these guys out there in the field. They're doing some really valuable work. And if you're asking them to zig when I'm suggesting they zag, let's debate that out, because that zig might actually take us off where our customer needs to be. So, they don't see it a lot, but boy, those boxing gloves, I love it every now and then to get with a great marketing person to just throw down and have a good old-fashioned chat with them to talk about their goals and how I think their goals could roll out to the ambassadors that we have out there. So that's kind of the focus, is a big part of my job. And I love culture. I've been fortunate to work with some fantastic companies. I did a little stint with Disney Cruise Lines, and Disney is the culture kings, right? So my short stint of 6 months with them, you basically become indoctrinated into the world of Mickey Mouse, but the culture makes sense and people just will follow that through. So it plays to my strengths, I think, pretty well to be a culture guy, and lucky enough I can take the team on that journey.
No, I think that's fantastic. I mean, I think down in Tails, speaking of Tails, I think Bacardi ambassadors, there's more Bacardi ambassadors sometimes than there are bartenders in a room. Yeah. there's so many of them, which is amazing. But also, it is important because it makes it a company. And of all the Bacardi ambassadors I've interviewed from around the globe, they all say the same thing. They love the culture of the company. So you are very lucky, and your brand ambassador team are lucky to have you fighting for them, because that means a lot. To have that, and somebody who's actually done the job, so you actually understand what they're feeling and what they're going through, is such a big difference than reporting to somebody who has no clue of what you do on a daily basis, which I think a lot of people suffer through. Like, they work for an agency, and that agency, they don't know sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up with, I always ask this last question because I think it's really important. What is one key lesson that you've learned while being a brand ambassador that you wish you knew when you first started?
Who's going first?
I'll go. This is something that I actually still look at this photo. There was a massive graffiti in Brooklyn near my house that said, "Nobody cares if you don't go to the party." Which, if you're hosting the party, that's different. Yes. But literally, nobody cares if you don't go out 7 nights a week. Like, if you're like I had this when I started. It was very much like, oh, I have to go. I have to be everywhere. Nobody cares if you don't go to the party.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really, really great words of advice. Adrian?
I got two here. One is very quite functional, and that is know how to build a PowerPoint presentation, please.
Yeah.
Go. There's so many great tutorials on YouTube, or invest a little bit of money of your own to go and learn how to build a deck, because the world we live in, whether it's a small company that Jen works through to a behemoth like myself, we communicate via PowerPoint.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. But having the skill set there to just navigate through PowerPoint, to put something compelling on some pages, it's going to help you in your future career, guarantee it. And the other one which is more sort of personal, which I implore people to do, is find a mentor, please. Find someone.
Good one.
Yeah, please find someone, and it could be in this industry outside, just to help you on your journey. I don't think we ask for help quite enough. You know, one of my mentors is actually my mum. She's been in a strong management career her whole life. And every now and then I just give her a call and go, hey, here's some of the challenges I face. Can you help me through this? And she's willing to bend the knee, obviously, with her son. It's a given. But I find it's just, she's got some sound advice. You know, she's years older than me. She's been doing this forever. And she's just like, Adrian, this is what you're facing. Try this out. So please find a mentor. And I do find, I don't like to sort of generationalize this, but millennials, which I'm on the cusp of, being born 1980, don't like asking for help. We want to figure it out for ourselves. But guess what? There's some experience out there that can help you, you know, grow, nurture, and become a big, beautiful flower faster than you could possibly figure out by yourself.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, most people, I think it's most people feel like somebody's judging them. Like, oh my God, if I ask that question, you know, so finding somebody that you're like, I feel comfortable with, and they're not going to judge you. You know, it's like, okay, you don't know this. That's okay. You know, sometimes I find I'm like, I'm not going to ask my boss because I realize they are judging you. So like, what? You don't know that? But finding somebody outside of that you feel comfortable with. Yeah. It's such a great words of advice because, you know, there's so many things we don't know and there's no reason you have to struggle to figure them out. Somebody's already done it before. Yeah. So there's so much great information out there and there's so many people that are willing to give it to you. I used to say that about this industry. It's like, if you're willing to learn, there is somebody willing to teach you. Always. It's probably one of the most giving industries in that way. There's so many different people out there who have experience and they love sharing it. I was really grateful for all the people who helped me when I was learning how to make drinks and like got up that time and learning how to be a brand ambassador for some of the more experienced people. So yeah, definitely ask for advice. And also on the cheat sheet for have you heard of a program called Canva?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So PowerPoint, if you want a cheat sheet, I use Canva a lot for like making my PowerPoints look very pretty. Or steal somebody else's that you like the format of, and then just utilize it.
Sound advice.
If you need if you need to do one really, really quickly and it's not your strong suit. But Adrian, Jen, this was really great. I really appreciate you two coming on and all these great words of advice. So thank you.
My pleasure.
And I hope to see you in person at BCB.
Sounds great. Hope so too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, guys. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye for now.